Okay, this is the notes to Earth's interior structure. So the question is, what is the Earth's interior structure? So just an overview. So the Earth is composed of the crust, which is the outside layer that we are living on, then the mantle, then the inner core, and then the outer core. So these are the major 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. We're going to have different names, subsections. So what is the crust? So the crust is the Earth's hard outer shell. It's from 0 to 32 kilometers, or 0 to 19.8 miles. It's the thinnest and the least dense layer. So there's a range here because usually it's not consistent. There are thinner portions of the crust and thicker portions of the crust. So what is the composition of the crust? So the crust is made of solid rock, and there's two major parts. If you look at this cross section of the crust, you're looking at the ocean. So it's the crust under the ocean and the crust under the continental crust. As you can see, the continental crusts are a little thicker than the oceanic crusts, and so there is a range in thickness. And then it's composed mostly of basalt and granite. And if you look up here, this is the percentage of elements in the Earth's crust. So if you're not sure what the basalt and granite is composed of, these are just mineral names. So there are compositions, the combinations of elements. So they're compounds. So about half of it's made of oxygen, not in gas form, but in solid form, because it's combined with other elements. And silicone, this is aluminum, and I believe this is iron, and about 4%. This color is very similar. Oh yeah, this is oxygen, so this has to be calcium, and then trace elements of others. So what is the mantle? So the mantle is under the layer under the crust, and it's about 2,868 kilometers, or about 1,800 miles thick, and it makes 80% of the Earth's volume. So it's the thickest layer, and it's also subdivided into a mesosphere, which is the lower mantle right here, and then the upper mantle right here is a stenosphere, and then the lower lithosphere. And we'll go into another slide explaining what the lithosphere is, because it's actually part of the crust too. Okay, what is the mantle composition? The mantle has an average density of 4.5 kilograms per centimeter cubed. This is an average because it actually changes between the upper and the lower mantle. So I'll explain. So it's mainly composed of solid rocks from silicone and magnesium. But the lower mantle, which is closer to a lower layer, is actually more dense, since it's mostly made of magnesium and iron. And iron is a more denser material than magnesium or the silicon. While the mantle is predominantly solid, so these are all rocks that we're talking about, it behaves like a viscous fluid. And actually the mantle, the liquid there, the viscous fluid we're talking about, not necessarily liquid yet, it's called magma. And then due to the fact that temperatures are close to melting points in this layer. So these solids are almost about to melt, so it's getting almost into a complete liquid flare state. So they're usually called molten. It's probably on another slide because it's not here. So if you think of volcanoes, when it erupts, the lava comes out. Before it's lava, it's actually magma. So down here, this is probably the upper mantle, not the lower one. There is the molten liquid, which is I have to correct myself. The molten liquid is just liquid metal, which I'm getting ahead of myself. That's in the core. This is molten. This is not molten. I'm using the wrong word. The viscous fluid of the magma. So it's there are some plummets here where this hot liquid actually comes up, and so there's cracks in the crust, and it can erupt. And so this hot magma, after it erupts and comes out of the crust, it becomes lava. So it has some fluidity. Here in this picture, if you see, it's a little tiny, but the temperature and pressure increases as you go from the upper mantle to the lower mantle. And the mesosphere, it's hot but stronger due to the high pressure. That's what it says. Okay, so defining lithosphere, because remember the mantle was only the lower part of the lithosphere. So the lithosphere is composed of the crust and the upper part of the mantle. So the reason why they group this together is because it's the least dense and the most rigid solid layer of rock, of Earth. So right here, this is the crust that I mentioned before, and then lithosphere is actually including the crust and the upper mantle, which is rigid. And so this is semi-rigid. This has the asthenosphere has some flow. That's the magma. So that's why they group this together. And this is and this is more dense, since this contains more iron. So what is the outer core? So we've already covered the crust, we've covered the mantle, and now we're at the outer core. That's about 2,900 kilometers below the surface, but it's about 2,300 kilometers thick, meaning it starts here and it goes from here about 2,300 kilometers, or about 1,429 miles thick. Okay, what's the composition of the outer core? The outer core is composed of hot iron and nickel metals, which are also always molten. Sorry, I was using this word molten earlier in magma, the mantle, but which is not. Molten means liquid metal. And this is completely in the liquid state, while the magma was close to the melting state of the rocks. So right here we're looking at the outer core. It's about 1,400 miles thick, and it's completely liquid iron and nickel. This is not scope of the lesson, but just fun fact. Since it's liquid iron, it actually corrects the magnetism of the Earth. And so like when the sea, like usually when you're they're using compasses, those who are on ships, and they're using actually this magnetic core to actually guide them to the North Pole and to the South Pole. So what is the inner core? Excuse me. So the inner core is the very middle right here, and that's about 5,150 kilometers, or 32 miles below the Earth's surface. It's actually made of the same material as the outer core, which is that nickel, iron and nickel, but it's not liquid. So this is the liquid outer core. Now we're going to the inner core. This is actually completely solid. So it's made of the same material as the outer core, but since it's like undergoing such high pressure and temperature, the inner core is actually made solid. And its density is about 13 grams per centimeter square. Did I mention the density to the outer core? Let me check. Yes, I did. I did not mention it. It's about 10. So as you can see, the density is increasing as you go inside to the inner core of the Earth. So why are there so different names for the layers? So in the beginning of the slide, I went through crust, mantle, and core. And then once I get to mantle, I was giving some more different layers of lithosphere, the ionosphere, the mesosphere. So what's going on? So looking at this diagram to the left, the names are categorized by chemical properties. So here's the chemical properties. So the core actually is not split into inner and outer, since they're all made of iron, mainly. This is the silicate rocks. Remember the magnesium and silicon? And then this is the crust. So if it's only by chemical composition, it would only be 3 layers. But this is actually by physical properties. So as we went over that, even though this is mainly iron and nickel, the inner core is solid while the outer core is liquid. The mesosphere, or the lower mantle, is solid. Then when you get to the ionosphere, it's plastic, meaning it's it has a viscous liquid, or it's the magma of the solid rock because it's near melting. And then lithosphere, which includes the upper mantle and the crust, that's the rigid portion. So this is its physical properties, these are its chemical properties. So just to review, putting it all kind of together, according to density, the crust is the least dense, as density increases in the upper and lower mantle, outer core, and then the inner core is the most dense, made of solid iron and nickel. Then here by size, as you can see, this layer, this upper and lower mantle combined is still making 80% of the Earth's layer, while the rest is the outer inner core, and then just a small percentage in the crust. Here's the practice we'll be doing in class, so you'll see it again.